If we could call tonight's meeting to order. Kathleen Allen. Here. James Bell. Amy Callan. Here. Brian Chetney.
Here.
Tom Siappa.
Here.
Brandon Legault.
Here.
Samuel Tripp.
Here.
And Elise Medicia. If you would all join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And now I'm going to turn it over to Deb and Eric and Christine, who would like to take a movement for you. Feel free to sing along. Tonight's agenda, we will move to Dr. BOE and Superintendent's report. Sure. You want me to?
Yes.
Tonight we have Tom Zuber from Mango, Metzger, and Barr, our external auditor, who is going to give the board an overview of our external audit report. Tom?
Hear me?
Sure. It's a little low.
I can be pretty loud, so I don't think I need this too much, but hopefully, I know you were provided the audited financial statements and internal control communication as of June 30th, 2018. And so I'm just here to give a few brief comments about the financial statements. We did meet a little over a month ago with the audit committee and reviewed in detail the financial information of the school district. Again, the audit report is about a 60-page document that has a lot of very good information in there. And we did spend a lot of time with the audit committee. We talked about year-over-year variances. We talked about budget variances. We talked about reserve accounts and fund balance, and we also talked about internal controls and checks and balances. So we did have a very good meeting. This district, along with all of the other school districts in New York State, continues to face challenges. A lot of those challenges really relate to state aid uncertainties. You've got challenges that relate to pension costs, health insurance costs. You also have to deal with property tax cap, so you have a lot of different challenges. And the district continues to be in good financial condition. You do a good job with regard to your reserves, the development, the utilization of your reserves. You're using those reserves as part of your budget process. and then looking at those reserves and reallocating funds to the reserves on an annual basis. So that's very good job. I know one of the areas we've talked about in the past was the utilization of fund balance and reserves to balance your budget. And in the past, the district was really heavily relying on appropriated fund balance and appropriated reserves. Part of that was a planned utilization. You did reduce your reliance on that this current year, which I think is very positive from the financial statement standpoint or financial condition standpoint. So the district is doing a very good job as it relates to. A couple of the other items that we talked a little bit about during the meeting were the challenges relating to the school lunch program. You've done an excellent job over the past 2 or 3 years in looking at that program and have in fact generated some profits in that program. So that's very positive. The biggest challenge is you continue to have a deficit that's offset by the general fund, but it is something that you want to continue to look at and continue to monitor going forward. So we did talk a little bit about that piece of the project. A couple of the other items that we talked about, not only do we look at the numbers side of the school district, we also look at the internal controls and checks and balances. I think I mentioned we did issue an unqualified opinion. We have no material weaknesses or significant deficiencies, which is very positive from the audit standpoint. That really it's the opinion that you're looking for. It's the standard opinion that indicates the financial statements are fairly stated in all material respects. So I think that's very positive. That's what we're looking for. As part of that process, we do have to sit down and look at the different internal controls and checks and balances over the different financial cycles. So as we look at the payroll process or we look at cash receipts and disbursements procedures, we have to sit down and we have to document all of the different processes and procedures the district has that would impact financial statements. And again, I'm pleased to report there are no material weaknesses or significant deficiencies. A few minor procedural recommendations that we've included in the internal control communication that management has or will respond to in a corrective action. And then the other item we know there are a couple of prior year communications that have been implemented. So you have issued some corrective action on some prior year discussion points. So again, very positive from the audit side. It shows that the district's reacting to our communications and very positive from the audit risk assessment process. Any other questions? Thank you, Tom.
Thank you very
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Tom.
Dr. Hugh, I will you like to move to the next item?
Where is it?
Close.
Shut up. We'll take it.
All right, it's up. Yeah, I'll put the lights down.
Yeah. Awkward space, that's fine. I think so. Do you have hard copies? Karen, that's not hard copies. Karen, does the board have hard copies of our?
Yes.
It might be easier to look at those. For the board, it might be easier to look at them. Yeah, or you could do that. As you recall, in September,
Do you want me to turn that on too, or are you good?
if you think it'll help,
Oh, do you want us to turn the lights on a little bit?
maybe that would help because this is,
Oh, just the lights.
we're not at the first slide either. We gotta go back. If you go too dark, I won't be able to see my notes. Does that help?
Can you guys see okay?
Does that help?
though?
I can, yeah. That's a good,
Yeah.
that's a good combination of light, I think. As you recall, many of you that come to the meetings regularly, and certainly the board will recall that in September, we did a presentation, a 15-minute presentation that took an hour. And tonight we're going to try to keep a 10-minute presentation to 10 minutes, but we're fine. The first presentation was really a historical walk from a general student achievement perspective from about the last 10 years, and it took us through the whole process of accountability. We talked an awful lot about the work that had been done at Fitzhugh Park initially, and then at Layton and the Oswego High School, as well as the district in general, being listed as a focus district. And all the pieces that we put into place to create some momentum for increased student achievement. And that work was largely successful, and all of our schools are now sitting in good standing. And that led to the work around the comprehensive district educational plan. So tonight, we're really going to take a historical snapshot simply on graduation rate. And you know that we've done an awful lot of work in the last year on elementary literacy initiatives, as well as trauma-informed classroom environments. And because we know that graduation rate is a K-12 issue, and that all of the students are all of ours. So really we're going to look at tonight just graduation rates over the last 10 years or so. So the first graph that you see, and Carrie and Heidi are always challenging me with colors. So I have mine labeled. We're showing different cohorts that we can take a snapshot look at, and then we'll talk a little bit about the change in the performance of different cohorts and how certain demographic changes in our community have impacted student achievement and drive the focus that we have on certain cohorts of kids in our district. The first one that you see, I have no color idea what the color is, but that's the all group.
You want me to do this part?
Well, I'll run through it quickly, but I'm not going to tell you what color it is. You're just going to have to figure it out. The one on the far left is the all group, and all is all students, all inclusive. Okay? The next color is called the general group, and that's the all group without students with disabilities. So that's general education typically. So it's our all group minus SWD. The next one is the students with disability subgroup. And you'll see in another part of the presentation that we didn't have a number, the required number to have a subgroup for students with disabilities. And that came in somewhere in the middle of this range of years that we're sharing with you. And the next one is the economically disadvantaged students. And Carrie's going to talk a little bit about the difference between our economically disadvantaged numbers. And the line that you see running across these bar graphs is our poverty line, and that's our free and reduced lunch. And there is a difference between economically disadvantaged and the reporting out of students in poverty. There are the different variables that Carrie will talk about. So Carrie's going to talk in a little bit greater detail in the next slide about that.
Okay. So as Dean had said, the all group, inclusive of all students that make up a cohort, and Heidi's going to explain what makes up a cohort. General, SWD, ED. ED, economically disadvantaged students. The difference with this is that the state is able to collect all the systems that a family might apply for that needs economic assistance. So food stamps, WIC, anything that a family, just the family, any student within that family, once the family applies, any student then is identified as economically disadvantaged. So it's a bigger net than just poverty, which is our free and reduced rate. The state has what's called NICES numbers for all the students, and they're tied into all the computer systems that mark these, that give identification for that assistance. And you can see some of the things that they're able to pull from. So our economically disadvantaged students will be students that are free and reduced plus all that other part that we're unaware of as a school district, but the state is able to pull that information. When we talk about a subgroup, there has to be at least 30 students in order to make a subgroup that identifies for our report card. I'm just talking about our school report card that takes us back to what we identified in September, what got us on the focus list and the other list. There's certain categories that needs to have 30 plus students. SWDs, students with disabilities, those could be the 30 students in that cohort, but it could also be 2-year former. So they might, if you don't have enough to make 30, they might lump your former 2 years into your SWD numbers. And that can be an advantage because sometimes those students might bump up your graduation rate.
So that really articulates the difference between the black line that you see, which is only identified by those students who apply for free and reduced lunch, and the greater formula that's compiled by SED from all of those other social networks and things that play into family poverty.
So when we talk about a cohort, there are some different examples that we can talk about. A cohort in general is a group of students who first entered ninth grade in the same school district, or in the same school together. Some examples, and this is where it becomes important to differentiate, what you see in the newspaper articles when they report out local school districts' graduation rates, the state provides the 4-year June rate for that. That doesn't include our August grads, which we're allowed to include in our 4-year number. And it doesn't include a 5-year or a 6-year cohort, which under ESSA, we are allowed to use as some of our data points. As Carrie mentioned, there have to be at least 30 students in any given category to create a subgroup. And when we go back to the graph in a minute, one really important thing to note is that for quite a while, we didn't have a students with disabilities subcategory because we didn't have enough to make that subgroup. We hover in the high 30s to low 40s right now for our group for that.
Per cohort.
Yep. So when we were looking at this graph, one, I wouldn't say simple graph because there's a lot of charts and a lot of colors in there. But just the span of the last 15 years to us was really fascinating. Because when you go back to the 01-02 year, you only have all. There weren't differentiations between general, SWDs, ED, and our poverty line was at one of its lowest points in the last 17 school years. Since then, you can see additions of different categories that the state either has us report out on or we've met for the subgroup. Students with disabilities first came in the 06-07 school year. And we're going to talk a little bit about what some of those important takeaways are when you look at that graph. The first is really to note that our students with disabilities, starting in 06-07, you can see that there is a little bit of a dip that Dean is going to talk about in a few minutes. And then we've made some improvements in those categories.
I think
Carrie, you
in-
were going to talk more about the poverty line or?
And the poverty line, again, just to repeat, the line going across is just our free and reduced lunch. So that information is gathered from our families that in high school it's rather difficult to get all the students to sign up for that free and reduced lunch. So it's truly at a high school level underreported.
If you look at that period of adjustment between the 06-07 school year and the 10-11 school year, that's the period over the last decade or so where we started to see reportable cohorts of SWD students and ED students. And you can see that there was a little period of adjustment where the poverty line was growing. We started to be able to identify cohorts of students with disabilities as well as students that were economically disadvantaged, and it changed our overall profile of student achievement quite a bit. But then when you move toward the second half of the graph, you're going to see that the performance with economically disadvantaged students and our students with disability subgroups have steadily increased over particularly the last 5 or 6 years.
During that period of time in the middle where our students with disabilities were first identified as a subgroup, those were also our years where as a district we had a number of schools in and out of accountability. And a lot of people did a lot of great work for those 5-6 years to get us to now where we are, which is in good standing. And we're going to talk a little bit about kind of where we're going from here next. So these were just the takeaways that we just discussed. And then our next graph
This graph is interesting because, and I've talked before in other presentations, not only with our comprehensive school improvement team, but also in presentations with the board, that the report, the 4-year June graduation rate is reported. And that's the column that you see on the left in green. Green. And then the column to the right is our 5-year, but what we're not showing is we also have a 4-year August rate that SL allows us to report out, as well as our 5-year graduation rate. So that some takeaways that we take from this that are critical is that many of our students who are not meeting the benchmark, or you can see that certainly our 5-year graduation rate is significantly better than our 4-year graduation rate. It tells us that our students are resilient. They're dedicated to take alternative structures in order to reach graduation. We have great intervention programs to try to get them to the checkered flag in creative ways. Our 5-year graduation rate is now in the 80s. And our August 4-year graduation rate is also creeping toward the 80s. So what we need to know now is what are the interventions and creative things that we need to do with our students who have the capacity for graduation rate in the 80s and what we would like to see in the 90s. But what are the variables that are preventing it, and what are the interventions that can create the graduation rate in 4 years, even if it's August, 4-year August graduation rate. We do know that historically in our district there are certain variables that impact student graduation rate, and largely some of those are non-academic. But we also do know that there are some challenging Regents examinations like global, that's been historically a problem for us and across New York State, but also some other requirements that we're able to capture and get those students to graduation in August of their 4-year cohort or in the 5-year cohort. So we're very pleased to see the consistency in our 5-year graduation rate, but I think it's also important to point out that there are some other creative things that are happening right now. We have the superintendent appeals, and I have the power as a superintendent to review certain student performance profiles with the principal of Oswego High School and look at other creative pathways that are now allowable to get students to graduation in more creative ways than the traditional passage of a set of required Regents exams. And Pat and I worked hard on that this year. We went through a whole host of students, and we have we have things in place at Oswego High School now to identify students that are predictable for non-completion. And we're keeping a much closer eye on them through our counseling department, our social emotional developmental health folks, and as well as Pat. And we have gotten a greater number of students to the checkered flag through creative pathways and superintendent appeals.
Kind of along with that, like
Yeah.
how does that break out when you look at the number of kids who do the later graduation, whether it's the 5-year or the August? Like, are there certain cohorts that make up that number more than other? You know what I'm saying? Like,
Oh, I see. If we were to break down the 5-year graduation rate,
Right,
what
like
would maybe be the
who's-
percentage of SWD
Oh,
and
so-
ED? So we could do that.
Yeah, I
Yes.
was just wondering,
We
because
have
like
the
you're talking about
capacity.
identifying who those kids are.
Mhm.
Like, you could do that through
Yes,
like how you
okay.
guys have broken it out here, and
Yeah.
it's whatever percentage of
Mhm.
the, economically
Yes.
disadvantaged or.
Yeah, we can break that up for you.
Yep.
The other thing that's important is there are some interventions that are new and creative that we've been building into the budget for the last 2 years. All-day CTE programs for students that are struggling to make the transition between middle and high. And we increased that number again this year. Those are great programs for students that are largely successful in a non-traditional program at city BOCES where they're getting all their core required courses. They're trying out a series of CTE programs, and they sometimes struggle transitioning back to the high school for the other half of the day. So now we have the capacity to put students that are identified as largely being expected to be successful that way in a full-day CTE program, but they're still our graduates. They still belong to us. And we've had a lot of success with that and other intervention programs that we cooperating with city BOCES in terms of the care program and some other things that help students that might otherwise struggle to be successful and get to graduation.
If a student starts out and they're in a cohort, and they say they get to their junior year, and they drop out of school, or the family moves out of the district, how does that affect our cohorts? Because they originally were part of it,
Yeah.
or now do they affect us negatively at the graduation rate? And if,
Yes, if they drop out, it does affect us. They're considered dropouts. That's what affects our graduation rate. If they move and they enroll in another district, that's good for us, as long as they've enrolled in another district. So we try to follow. We do have the counselors try to follow students to make sure they enroll in another district.
when you break it out, like Amy has the percentages of SWDs and all those, can you do that with the dropouts?
Yes,
What percentage
yes.
Can dropped out and how they affect?
Yes, yes.
And if they were in a category?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did
Yeah.
we do the, did Deb Kazner present to this group the dropout information?
No.
Oh,
That might be a good.
that may be a good presentation, do a follow-up.
You can go back to the previous slide. So if you look at the historical rates from 2013-14 to 16-17,
Yeah.
there's obviously a slight reduction over the years, correct? From a percentage standpoint, you're looking at 80%,
Yep.
83%
Yeah,
to 77, 82. What would you say the reason is for that?
Well, I think when we look at our rates, we really focus a lot on our students with disabilities. So actually, one thing I was going to talk about here is the CSIS REASE task program that we're working with Tracy Mosier this year. So when we look at students with disabilities who Pat and his counseling team and Lisa Carter identified as at risk to graduate on time, but still have the potential to graduate on time, they identified 10 specifically who are right on track. Don't really anticipate any problems for June. There are about 13 others though, that right now, they're kind of on the fence, and we're putting some different structures in place and monitoring their progress throughout the year. Because if we could help the majority of those other 13, so that our total students with disabilities who are on track to graduate would be 23. That would not only help our students with disabilities subcategory, but it would bring our all graduation rate back up to where it would be much closer to our general graduation rate. So when you pull out some of those subgroups, our graduation rate is kind of right where it should be based on our ESSA targets.
So the reason I asked that question is because on the previous two slides, obviously, and you're talking a lot about the SWD, that's decreasing as over 2013 through 2017 as well. From a percentage-wise, you're going 51 to 43 to 42. Are we trending that way?
I don't think
Going
we're trending
forward?
that way, but I think that you make a good point in that these are really cohort-specific variables. And any teachers in the audience will tell you that they might get a certain cohort of students that come into the middle school in 7th grade. The same is true at the high school in 9th grade. Cohorts have personalities. And sometimes there are higher performing cohorts, right, than others. And there are cohorts of students that are more challenging in a variety of ways. And that's one of the reasons, that's probably likely the greatest variable in dips and peaks that you see.
And, sorry.
The other thing I think was important to point out, I'm glad you did that. If you go back, maybe you were going to talk about this already. If you go back to this and you go back to the historical data from 01, 2, 3, 4, 5, when we didn't have those other cohorts, opportunity for graduation was greater. There were a larger variety of diplomas that were available for kids. There was a Regents diploma, there was a non-Regents diploma, there was an IEP diploma. So kids just graduated. And we had 85, 90% graduation rate. And way back when, probably in 1990 or in 1980 even, because what the pathways are doing now, and the Commission of Education is very in tune to creating pathways that are fair and equitable for all students, regardless of their ability, more closely mirrors the pathways that we created with a variety of different diploma options 20 years ago. So what we've done is we've had to adjust to the new reality of larger cohorts of students with disabilities, as well as an increase in our economically disadvantaged and our poverty line.
And because it's a relatively small subgroup, one or two students can swing you from
Yeah, you can-
improvement to not.
You can see that. I mean, you can see it from this graph compared to the other graph. My concern was that we don't keep trending in the other way. I mean, even though our numbers present well, if you look at it, it's over time, it peaks and then it trends, and starts trending the other way. And obviously, the concern with that is, right, is these numbers are public. They're out there, and when people are looking at coming and living here and putting their family here, these are numbers that they look at. So I think it's great that we have programs that are working towards improving this rate. I think we do a good job of communicating those things, but this number is real. This number is at the topic of discussion when people either decide to move here or move to Baldwinsville or another district. So that's why I'm asking the question on, do you see us trending the same way that we're going now? Or do you see that the programs that we're investing in the next year or is going to help improve it so that we can start trending back the other way?
I see that there's two answers to that question. I see that the trend that's impacting our all category is increasing steadily. Our SWD population and our ED population, that's one trend that is increasing. Also, the success rate on that trend is increasing, but our all population, because those two other categories are growing, it's hard, they're in there.
Right.
They're
So
in
these
there.
are triggers, right? I mean, when you start to see something trending in a different way,
Right.
you can apply funding, you can apply resources, those types of things to these. So it's
Right.
good that we're looking at this thing.
You know, but P-TECH's a great example. It's a non-traditional program for non-traditional kids that have the academic capacity, but maybe have some other need or are really, really talented in a specific way. It's another way to get them hooked so that we can get them to graduation and beyond.
I think for a while, when we lost that ability to have IEP and local diplomas, the pendulum swung a little too far in the other direction. And our current commissioner fully recognizes that. She's had meetings where she talks to the district superintendents. We've gone out for a number of trainings with Mr. Todd, and he has made the message very clear that from the commissioner, we need to explore as many pathways as possible for our students.
So those are great points. So that when these numbers are published, those bullet points should go along with the publishing of it, so that it's not just a number.
Yep.
There's a reason behind the number, and the district is being proactive in increasing that.
There's always the
That's
story
a good
behind
point.
the
It's
data.
not apples and apples.
It's not.
Every community is different. The variables that impact your all graduation rate are different.
It's just like the capital project, right?
Yep.
It's the helping them explain what's within the capital project, not necessarily just a number.
Yep. Just a couple other quick things that I wanted to just touch on before we move on to the regular agenda. I referenced in an email to the board that I was going to send another email with some attachments, and I just thought it would be easier just to print them hard copy. I won't pass them out now, but before you go, I have the calendar of events that I've asked you to sign up for. That's a spreadsheet. It's a hard copy of the spreadsheet that Karen is managing. So if you pick events that you're interested in, you can email the dates that you choose to Karen, and she'll put you on the spreadsheet. The other one is the capital project talking points and Q&A questions that will be helpful when you get in there with your home and school associations or just interacting in general. They're already uploaded on the website under capital projects, so our hope is that the whole community is talking about this and answering questions and answering questions correctly. Because people don't have all the correct information, we're the gatekeeper of that. We can, in conversations in our circles of friends and family, give them the right answers. And so those materials are available for everyone as well. And the third is a copy of the general PowerPoint that I've been using in faculty presentations, and I will use it around the community, also be uploaded to the capital project website portion of our website. And I have that for the board as well, so that when it's just a lot of information that answers a lot of questions to make you more familiar with the nuts and bolts of what this all is. So these are here for you, but I'll pass them on after.
And also we have new videos uploaded
Yes,
to the.
and that's, when I've been doing the presentations across the school district, I've been showing the launch video. We have 2 sets of videos, as most of you know, through robocalls and some other things. One is a set of videos that are being produced by city PR folks that we work with. The launch video was let loose 2 weeks ago, and all the rest of the videos will be uploaded to the website. They're all completed now. That's a set of videos where there's a lot of information shared, and there's interactions and conversations in the schools with teachers and principals. The second set of videos, and 2 have been released now. The first one was at Minetto Elementary. Today we released the Oswego Middle School video. That's a walk and talk. That's a student-generated series through Matt and WBUC, hosted by Tori Tripp. And that is a more conversational, more casual, and those are a little bit longer, where the principal meets Tori at the door, welcomes her to Minetto School or the middle school, and it's a conversation about what's the impact of the capital project on the middle school on teaching and learning. How is it going to be better for a middle school? And it's just a conversation between the principal and Tori, and 2 of those have already been released, and the others are coming. So there's a lot of information on the website, Q&A, a lot of events. You're going to see a lot of presence not only from the Community Relations Committee, but also board members. There's a calendar of events starting on the 27th. Athletic events, JV and varsity girls and boys basketball, modified basketball and volleyball, varsity girls and boys hockey, and all the musical concerts that are hosted at the Oswego High School Theater. There'll be a presence in all of those venues, not only a full complement of informational storyboards about the capital project that are new and to be delivered tomorrow, but informational brochures that people can take with them and ask questions. There'll be videos looping of all the projects that are, all the videos that have been produced. They'll be on loops in those places. And there'll be folks there to answer your questions. 2 members of the Community Relations Committee, as well as 1 board member in each of those events. So everyone's dedicating a lot of time. And everyone's invited to those conversations. And that's been the message as I've been rolling out the capital projects as faculties, is this is an all-in project. We have to all take responsibility for promoting this and supporting the improvement on teaching and learning in Oswego, and creating new teaching and learning spaces inside and outside of the schools that we can be proud of and that our kids deserve long after some of us are gone. And we had a really great meeting last week with from representatives of the 4 bargaining units. Carrie was there, CSEA was represented, COESA was represented, and the administrative personnel group was represented, as well as representatives of music and athletics. Rhonda was there as well. And I think we have a commitment from all stakeholders in our school community that we're all in on this. And if we all push out the promotional information that's being generated, everyone's working exhaustively on this, we are going to be very successful with this. I love the fact, Mary Beth, in your walk and talk that you kept saying the successful capital project. That wasn't lost on me.
If I was just a voiceover, it would have been better.
No, it was great. It was great.
Tori looked great. Matt did a great job. I should have just been a voiceover.
Yeah. So storyboards are being delivered tomorrow and distributed. There'll be a full set of storyboards in the lobby of Oswego High School, a full set of storyboards in the lobby of Layton Elementary School, where a lot of our indoor athletics are, a full set of storyboards here posted in the main lot here at the middle school Mary Beth for modified athletics. And then there are also additional promotional boards, one on finance, one on site work, and one specific to athletics. that are going to be spread throughout our community as well. There also will be many, many 11 by 14 size posters on the financials and the overall information about the capital project, as well as a handout. The proof is due to a brochure that the proof is coming into me on Monday. Am I forgetting anything else? So it's a lot. Literally, we're working on this capital project full time because it's that important. Now is more important than ever. There will be a series of 4 editorials in the Pale Times and across other media outlets that are being written by me, and you can expect other editorials that are going to be written by key stakeholders across the community that are supporting and promoting the project. I met with the mayor today. They're all in. I'm going to do a presentation for the Oswego County Council in a couple weeks. And the purpose of that really is to create a conversation and dialogue from the councilmen about their support of this project. Because really it's just another opportunity. We all are preaching to the choir quite a bit because we all are so all in on this. But it can create a dialogue where counselors from Oswego can have conversations with reporters about how important this is to their constituency groups. This is a community project.
So if I can add something.
Yep.
From a board member perspective, sure. When you, so we're really pushing hard and we're doing all the right stuff with the capital project and presenting it and getting others involved. The difference is the folks that it's going to impact, and it's you folks that work in the district that are going to directly be affected by the capital project. When you look at the numbers from the last time that the vote went out, the numbers were very low. One would think that we didn't have a lot of folks go out and vote on the project, right? When you look at the overall numbers. So if there's anything that I can suggest or ask, is one way or another, is that you do make it out to vote that day. Especially the folks that are in the district, that work for the schools itself. Not going out and vote and not being there to vote for the project or against it, whatever your choice is, because you have that choice. You're not giving it a chance to even pass if you're not the ones that are supporting it, or like I said, it's you have a choice one way or the other. But not going, you're not putting a vote in. So again, if you go back and you look at the numbers from the previous time that it was out, they were low. Their numbers were low around a very significant capital project that would have impacted each and every one of you in this room. So again, I encourage your coworkers and those that work within the district. This is yours. This is going to benefit you and your children on a daily basis. I would encourage you be the advocate to go out there and talk about the capital project and talk about why we need this just as much as we are up here. So we can only do so much. Dean can only present it so many times, 6 ways different to the sun, but at the end of the day, you folks are the ones that should be advocating. That's just my opinion. And that's when I go out and I speak at Charles E. Riley, that'll be my position when I talk there or anywhere else is needed. So I'm a huge fan of the project. I believe that it'll benefit our district and our students and our faculty and teachers in a lot of different ways, but you need to be out there to vote.
I think there's a lot of positive momentum on this. And last time it was almost quiet.
It was.
It was quiet. And it showed in the polls with 1,500 some votes, and 900 of those were no.
So think about that number.
Flip that over.
Think about that number and how many folks are employed in the district. The district alone, right? 1,500 votes, 900 no. And we have how many people that work in our district?
600. But about 60% of our employees live in Oswego.
Mm-hmm.
But still, that's a lot of votes.
It's a lot of votes.
And it's more than just your choice to vote, it's your voice. It's the conversations you have that have to be positive to your circle of friends and family and your social group and your clubs and the place that you work. And you know, that's what's critical, is everyone has to be talking about it.
Right, and kind of going along with what they said too, I mean, any questions that any of you have, or anyone has, I mean, you can contact any of us to get the answers on that, because I think, you know, I don't want to repeat the same thing that was said, but that was what we realized after the first time, is that the more voices and different voices who are sending the same message, the stronger the message is going to be. Hence the reason why we have the Community Relations Committee that's made up of a whole bunch of different community members from all different areas, so that we could really educate everybody on exactly what was going on, the specifics. We had an opportunity to have questions and really mull over everything. A lot of brainstorming goes on, and then all of those people can then take the information out to their people. And I think that's really the basis of all of that is that's where, knowledge is power, and we have strength in numbers. So just, it's a benefit to our entire community. So.
Aren't you glad you came tonight for your lecture on the capital projects? Many of you have heard this spiel already in your faculty meetings, but it's that important. Okay.
It's a good message.
The only other thing I wanted to mention, I wanted to thank those teachers. Originally, as you know, that we started the Leaders in Literacy program this year, where I'm selecting a book every month that will be launched on the Dean and Dane Show. The theme is kindness this year. Every book is about kindness, and it'll also have some literacy theme. This year, the launch book is called Each Kindness. It's being read across the district by me. I loved going into classrooms. Originally, we put it out to elementary, K-12, K through 6 teachers, and 11th and 12th grade English teachers. But now I kind of would like to branch out and invite all English, anybody in K through 12 that wants to have us come in. Everybody wants me, of course, but there are other administrators that are part of the project that are willing to come into your classrooms. But I will come in as much as my calendar allows. I love doing it. I've been in elementary classrooms, many elementary classrooms. Rhonda has read, Jamie has read, Harry and Heidi have read. This is a great launch book. Kim Leroy is my children's literature consultant. She's the one that's helping me to choose the books from month to month, and we've almost gotten to the point where we know what the December book will be. So, and there's a story about it on the webpage as well. So, it's a good opportunity for me to get into schools, because I spent 25 years in elementary schools teaching reading, and I kind of miss that. That's it.
Okay. Next on the agenda is unfinished business. I did not receive anything from unfinished business, so we'll move to Board of Education. That the Board of Education approve the following names as public members of the Community Relations Committee: Dr. Dennis Northleaf, Pat Carroll, Bob Ruggio, Pam Carpoli, Tim Stahl, Carrie Boyer Papa, Michelle Horgan, Jim Huckabee, Heather Del Conte, Jen Simborski, Mary Beth Fierro, and Dan Rose. If I could have, is there any discussion?
I think there's a misspelling on Pat Carroll's name. I think there are 2 R's and 2 L's.
Thank you, Sue.
And I had some discussion on it. I wanted to talk about it. In terms of where we're going with this committee, in terms of down the line, are we going to continue this committee once the capital project is done?
I think that was kind of my idea from the get-go. I mean, obviously, right now our main focus is on the capital project, but I think it's important to keep these lines of communication open throughout, so that we're constantly, not meeting it on a terribly regular basis, but at least checking in with these different people to make sure that they always know what's going on and are able to provide us with feedback of maybe what's going on.
Right. And I've spoken with Amy about this. I had a concern about this. In context, my understanding or my perception of the Community Relations Committee would be that it would be an interface between the board and the community. So I had a couple things on there. Mary Beth Fierro and Dan Rose. Where is Dan Rose here?
Yep.
Yeah. Hi, Dan Rose. How are you? I've never met you before, but nice to meet you now.
Nice to meet you.
I just want to say, I had concerns about putting other people from the district on the committee, so that I wanted to have that interface just between the public and the board. So I had between Mary Beth and Dan, there was nothing personal about that. It was just my concept of how the committee would work, and not having people from the district sitting on besides the board. So that's what I wanted to address and see how that works, because as far as it relates to the capital campaign, I'm all good with it, because that information is flowing, we're going both ways. But once we come into the community relations portion of it, I think that it should be just the community and the board. And I'd just like to know where everybody else, how everybody else feels about that.
I don't have any problem with them being on there if they are willing to step up and do it. Anybody that volunteers to take on something extra to better our community, I don't see anything wrong with it. I think Jen Zamborski is also a school district employee. But I can see your point and respect it, but I would have no problem with them. You know.
And I mean, you already know how I feel. I mean, I definitely think that they're both an asset to the community, or to the committee rather, not only for the capital project, but I also think down the road, I think that having an administrator and having, you know, Dan being teacher and also coach, I think that they're, and also you guys are community members. I mean, you guys are, we live here, taxpayers have kids in the district, so I think that that's another valid point, that you have a vested interest, they have a vested interest. And to Brian's point, if they're willing to volunteer, I take all the volunteers we can get. I think like I said, strength in numbers, and I think we really represent every area of the community, and to not include people within the district, we're missing that link.
I know Sam and I went to the last meeting. I guess I just have a concern with some of the negativity that occurred at the meeting and coming out of the meeting through emails and whatnot. And I think maybe the community, that committee needs to be pulled in a little bit so that they're not overstepping their bounds in what their role is.
Well, I think we talked about that. I talked about that with Amy as well. So there's more definition. It was put together, I think, on the fly, and it's evolving in its process and where it's going. And right now, the information is flying fast and furious, so it is evolving. But I just wanted to voice my concern regarding the idea of people from the district. And again, nothing personal, just my concept of how this committee would work. So.
Brandon?
I'm fine with them being on it. I don't see any reason. They're community members as well. They're professional enough to be able to wear two hats, I'm assuming, during discussions, and it's just my opinion. I'm okay with it.
I just think that, like all committees, committees are advisory to the board.
That's right.
So I really don't, I don't see them having any extra power, because they are advisory, and that's it.
I guess the question I would have is there going to be some fluidity with this committee, where if additional people wanted to come on or people were coming off, what that would look like? Because the one thing that strikes me about the committee, and I shared this with Tom and Amy at the onset of this, is I think if we're going to have a community relations committee, it should be a good cross-section of different perspectives in our community. And this is a great makeup for the capital project portion, because they're representing Oswego Health and you know, different people who represent large constituency groups that can push our message, which is what we want them to do right now. But I'm not sure that we have a cross-section in this community relative to different perspectives of maybe socioeconomics, for example, or does that make sense? That's all. I think that would enhance the committee significantly if we really are looking for community relations to get the perspective of different cohorts of the community.
Yeah. And I think as this committee evolves, they'll look at the gaps and say, we're missing this portion, or to your point,
Yeah.
we need somebody else, or we're not getting a voice from here.
Depending on, I think, what it is we're looking at. I think that
Yeah, I agree.
when I presented the idea back in July, wasn't really sure like where it was gonna go. And then when we finally got together to put it together, we were at the capital project. So
Right.
then it was like, okay, who's gonna help us the most with that particular? And that's kind of how this evolved. But
Right.
as it goes, maybe the next phase or things that we're looking at, we would look at other
Right.
potential people to add to it. Speaking of ed, we left one person off, I just realized, Will O'Brien. From
Will O'Brien?
Will O'Brien, yep, from Pathfinder, local business owner, he's also on this committee.
I just think it would be nice to have some maybe rank and file parent or,
Maybe look at the whole.
yeah.
Once we get through the capital project, what do you think this community will be doing? What types of things?
I think it would be, I mean, just, I think a lot of it would just be bridging that gap of communication. If you can learn from them, like maybe we feel like we aren't getting communication on X, Y, and Z. And it would just be that open feedback, so that then we, just like you said, as an advisory board, could go back and say, you know, people are kind of feeling like they're missing information on, you know, what, I don't know what the answer is. But it could be that maybe we could try to identify areas that we want to learn a little bit more about, or I think it's just going to kind of evolve as time goes on. You know, whether it's focused on, you know, use our website, for example. If some people are like, geez, the, you know, websites, we couldn't find such and such, or the, something wasn't updated, or that kind of feedback, that maybe people from the outside, maybe we don't necessarily pay attention to it.
How would that information get to the board? Would you have a committee chair that would come to the board, or?
Well, right, and that's
would we be
where, like, you
fielding-
know how we added on the agenda, the discussion from committees. So discussion on committees, if we had had a meeting, then either Tom or I would speak on behalf of the,
I just don't think that we or administration need emails from every other person on the committee. They don't want to be flooded with emails. I mean, if we have one person talking to the board, talking to the superintendent.
oh, absolutely, yeah, that's exactly, I mean, and that's how I think all of our other committees work too. I think that it should be, the committees focus, they work on their own, independent, and then one of us, from the board members, reports to the entire board on what happened. You know, it cuts down the legwork on the entire board. Now we're doing the legwork and then bringing, you know, suggestions back to the entire board, so.
Right, and that brings it back to what my concern was, is that the overstepping. And I guess, you know, I mean, obviously this committee has met a couple times before even being approved. Do you have objectives? Do you have goals for what this committee is supposed to, the purpose of it and how it's supposed to serve? And again, I'll bring it back to my concern with the overstepping is what Sam's saying is the emails that are coming from committee people, you know, telling the superintendent what to do and contacting BOCES.
So those emails are,
So-
that's just within our, I'm sorry, I haven't checked my email. Those are emails between these committee members, so Tom and I,
Mhm.
and then these,
Are they private? They should be private from the board. Is that what you're saying? They should be private from the board?
no, it's not, I'm asking who got the, I mean, it sounds like you got the email, so I'm just asking who was sending the emails.
Yes,
and
I
who-
saw the emails.
So they sent you emails too?
I saw the emails. And my concern is that you have committee members on here that are overstepping and bound, messaging the superintendent, messaging our PR person at city. They're volunteers. They're supposed to come back to you, which is what you're saying.
Right.
And that's what I'm saying, you need to pull it back in, because some of that, it's just not appropriate. It's not appropriate protocol, it's not the proper channels. And then the negativity through that meeting, that's what I kind of stepped back and was like, oh my goodness.
I don't
I'm
think there
not
was
really
any
sure about
negativity
that.
at the meeting.
When there was the discussion about the slides, when they were pulling the slides up about the fields on there. And then there was a couple people on the committee that just said, pull those right off, don't even discuss the fields. And we take the fall for that. This board
No,
will
I
take
don't
the
think
fall for
they
that.
said take the picture off. They didn't say take the text off, because
They
they said there's
take
too
it,
much.
pull it right off there,
Just-
don't even
just
mention
the-
it.
No, they said
No,
just the picture.
The exact words were, don't even mention it, because I remember it took me back and I was like, that's not a good idea. We take the fall for
No,
that,
they,
because
no,
that's
no,
the
no, no,
board.
no, no, they absolutely said take the picture off, because that was the focus of the campaign last time, and it turned everybody off. They
No,
said
I was the one that said, well, if you take
Leave
that
the
picture
text
out,
there.
put the pictures of the damage that needs to be done about the athletic field. Because we're not gonna deceive the public in this whole thing, and that's my concern, is that some of that negativity, if that's your perception of the way it came, that's the perception that I took away from there. And so perception is everything.
Well, we have a board we have one of the boards is focused specifically on the site work around athletics. But we led the capital project, the story led, even in March, with building improvement.
Yep.
Any teacher that sat at the capital project presentation, any community member, anybody that came to the public hearing knows that we didn't lead with massive stadium. There were those that reported it that way. We always have wanted to focus primarily on the improvements, the 88% of the project that focuses on improvements to teaching and learning spaces. But we cannot hide the fact, and a lot of middle school folks were here, and we had a nice conversation about this the other day. We're not gonna hide the improvements to athletics, and we're not ashamed of them, because our kids deserve it. But it's 11.33% of the total project is on the site work around athletics. But I think there were I think what Kathleen was talking about, there were some feelings at the committee that, you know, we should not talk about that, we should minimize that. And we always have. It's always been, we've always led with the message, this is about teaching and learning space.
I think we're doing a better job at it this time.
I think people are
Displaying
listening
that
better.
message, yes.
People
So, and
are
I think it's
listening.
a great message, and I think that's,
Right.
those numbers are important to talk about.
Yep.
And again, if it's somebody's opinion that that's what should be done, then so be done. I think, Dean, if you have any concerns from the committee perspective of the way they're expressing themselves, I would hope that you would go to Amy, talk to Amy about that. Amy would bring those.
We had a few texts about it.
Yeah, Amy would go to the committee, talk to the committee about it. I mean, it's an evolving committee, it's not set in stone. It is up to the committee to come up with their mission and their goals and those types of things, but you have to meet as a committee to get there. So I think that it is a fantastic thing to have a voice to the public, and I think if you have a concern with emails or texts or anything else that's coming to you, then you'll go to Amy and that'll be addressed. So I think that's the appropriate way to go about it.
And I think in regards to, Kathleen, what you're saying, just with the negativity, I think what Brandon just said, I think you kind of just hit the nail on the head. Everybody has their opinion, and I think that's all I took it was he was saying, just take that, everything else was like the before picture, and this was the after picture. And even Dean and I talked about that, like, this is the only after picture that we have, and it's a beautiful picture, and, you know, a lot of us think that's great, but just take it off, because a lot of the negative people, that's what they're focusing on. So don't talk about it, just put the before pictures, don't put the after picture.
I mean,
So that, we were talking about the site work board at that
Yeah.
point, and we had three photos of areas that needed significant improvement. And then the picture of the new main campus stuff. And so now instead we replace that with a picture of a, you know, crappy looking dugout, and created a new board that is all about the athletics, because that's part of the story.
Yeah. I mean, heck, I was even quoted, I think,
But
in the
yeah.
paper for saying let's not talk about the athletics, right?
Right.
I mean,
But
it's my opinion is the bigger picture of it is the 88% for whatever that number exactly is, the
11.33 for
11,
athletics.
Right. That's the focus should be
Site
the other way.
That's right.
Not necessarily, we spend a lot of time talking about the athletic fields and those types of things, and less time talking about the improvements to the schools and everything else. So I think the message that you're leading with now, you're doing a great job. I think we're set up for success, and I think we're sending the right message.
My biggest concern, and I already shared it, and I think as long as everybody understands that, from my perspective, a community relations committee is evenly represented by all different types of people. And right now, this group, the purpose of this committee at this juncture is pushing it out into constituency groups, and I think that will happen. But we might be talking about perspectives on student programming, or what are you hearing about this? Or we need to have, you know, parents who maybe sometimes aren't engaged with us. That's all.
I was going to say too, just my closure too, is, again, I'm going to go back to volunteers putting their time in from the community, who are involved in every aspect of this down the lane. And if they're giving feedback, they're gonna give feedback one way or another. But anybody in this room, and I say this jokingly but true, I think you can all understand, Dean will take the good and the bad, and he's certainly gonna act on what he feels appropriate. If somebody says, change this, if he doesn't agree with it, he's not gonna do anything.
Any other discussion? If I could have a motion, please?
I'll make a
I'm
motion.
sorry.
Oh, it's just a call to question. But make the motion, yes.
Could I have a motion?
Move it.
Second?
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Next, we will. Next on the agenda is committee discussions. Would any committees like to add anything to the agenda?
I think we've talked
Yeah, I think-
exhaustively about community relations.
Beat it up.
We haven't met with facilities, but we're ready to, the windows,
One went in today.
yep,
Yeah.
which is ahead of schedule because they were supposed to be Wednesday and Friday. But once the windows are in, we do final inspection, we hope to have an event
Soon.
at the high school. That would be great.
Nice.
I don't know if anybody knows that we're board.
I do, yeah,
Did you?
that's really nice.
Next on the agenda is the consent agenda. Minutes of the regular Board of Education meeting of October 30th. Minutes of the special Board of Education meeting of November 15th. Approval of the Treasurer's Consolidated Report, Monthly Budget Status Report, and the Oswego City School District Financial Report, July 2018 through October 8, 2018. Fund balance projection, November 2018. Monthly transfer report, October 2018. Extra classroom activities fund report, Oswego Middle School, October 2018. Extra classroom activities fund report, Oswego High School, October 2018. And the special education report, 11/20/2018. Could I have a motion, please?
Move it.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Next, we will move to curriculum with Carrie Glass.
Okay, I have two items on the agenda. The first one, A, is Oswego Summer Grant Program proposal coming from Fitchie Park. And it's really not a summer grant proposal. What this is, in Proctor's contract, there was grant proposal money set aside, and we've moved it from being just in the summer and split it up evenly amongst the buildings. And teachers can apply for those grants within their own buildings, and they have to put forth a proposal to their principal, who then decides whether to put it forth to be accepted by the board. So the first one is from Fitchie Park, as I said, and Nick Little is putting forth a proposal to pay some teachers and TAs to help with his project that he does with the Student Leadership Council. They record morning announcements every Thursday from 3:45 to 5 o'clock. They do all the recording right there with video, and then they play them throughout the week.
Any discussions? Motion?
Move it.
Second?
Second.
The second proposal is also from Nick Little, and this is to attend the Moe's Museum. The grant is for the bus transportation and for buying the tickets to get into the Moe's down in Syracuse for the science trip.
Any discussion?
I just want to say thank you to Nick Little. I think he's amazing, and we're very lucky to have him. He always goes above and beyond to really provide as many opportunities for our students as he can, and he's really great. So just want
I
to
echo that.
publicly say thank you to him.
Could I have a motion, please?
Move it.
Second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Next, we'll move to personnel with Dr. Sweeney, please.
A, professional staff recommendation leave of absence for Rebecca Ware, a teaching assistant at Riley, for a family rearing need.
Any discussion? Motion?
Move it.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
B, professional staff recommendation probationary, Michelle Bruno, biology at the high school, effective 12/3. Be it further resolved that the probationary expiration date will depend on the individual teacher's APPR ratings, and therefore be it further resolved that to receive tenure, the individual must receive overall APPR ratings of effective or highly effective in at least 3 of the 4 preceding years, and therefore be it further resolved that if the teacher receives an ineffective composite or overall APPR rating in their final year of probation, they will not be eligible for tenure at that time, and there's a tenure due date of 12/3/22.
Any discussion? Motion?
Move it.
Motion?
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
C, extra compensatory recommendations for Fitchie Park School, parent training instructors that fall under the Leader in Me title funding.
Any discussion?
Yeah, is this the last year for those ones?
We hope.
This is actually title money. She's paying the parent training instructors under title money for the Leader in Me information though. But the Leader in Me goes, I believe she has to write a grant for 2 more years. I think she has 2 more years left for the
Okay.
full training.
Okay, thank you.
Motion?
Move it.
Second?
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
D, extra compensatory position recommendations for Kingsford Park, Homework Help Club, as presented.
Any discussion? Motion?
Move it.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
E, extra compensatory position recommendation for Minetto, Elementary Strings Director for Cameron Adele.
Any discussion? Motion?
Move it.
Second?
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
F, extra compensatory position recommendations for the middle school for after-school study table mentor scholar group, as presented.
Any discussion? Motion?
Move it.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
G, extra compensatory position recommendations for the middle school after-school study table detention supervisor, Jane Fossman.
Any discussion? Motion?
I'll make the motion.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
H, extracurricular volunteer recommendations for the winter sports season.
Any discussion?
I just have a quick question. I was asked about this in public. When people volunteer, which we have a lot of volunteers, like in sports and other areas, in particular with sports, is there any cost to the volunteers? Nancy, probably has the
So-
answer to that.
Rhonda, if you wanted to just share a little bit about the requirements for the athletics.
Yep, they have to be
volunteer.
working towards their coaching certificate,
Mhm.
so any expense that they incur, they would then keep. So for example, CPR, AED, they have to incur that expense unless they go through the BOCES, which we give them Lisa Spencer's information through BOCES. And then a lot of the workshops actually can be done online, free of cost. But then if they're gonna go into getting their actual coaching certificate, that is something that they have to then invest money in, which is not that much money, but that's something that they hold then, they possess that certificate.
And how much is that for them to?
I think it's about
Do all
$350. It
of it.
depends if you want to venture off into sports specifics, if you want to stay with one sport, but then, say for example with track and field, if you want to just do a track and field overall, or if you want to go into pole vaulting, or if you want to go into throwing, those are different segues that you can get into and be more specialized. That costs a little bit more money. So it's typically about $300 for your overall certification, and then it doesn't go away from there.
So that's good for ever?
It's good forever, yeah. Yep, and as long as every year you keep your CPR AED, that's just a requirement to have. The biggest expense truly right out of the gate is the fingerprints, because even if you've had them on file with the Sheriff's Department, you have to do it through BOCES if you're gonna work for any kind of school district, whether it's volunteering or if you're actually, working, being compensated for your time. And that is something that everybody has to have.
And that's added into that $300?
Yes.
Is that typical that a school would ask the volunteers to pay?
It's a state
rather than
mandate.
pick up
It's a
the-
state requirement, yeah. Yep.
No, I know it's a requirement that they have to have it. I'm saying, is it typical that a school requires them to pay for it, even though they're volunteering.
Yes.
Their time.
Yep. And then typically after that, what we do is we set up something through BOCES. So annually, if they, out of the gate, they pay for their own CPR AED because they want to get it in a time frame that it's not offered by the district. Every school district come June, what we do is we do a recert for everybody. So then they're in our BOCES coaster for that. So anybody that is coached for us, I send out an email saying we're going to do a renewal at this date, please attend. And then we usually typically get all the coaching staffs, whether they were paid or they're volunteer, to come to that event that we have at our school. If we have some other, for example, we have Kevin Ahern, who also works for Fulton as a teacher. He can then choose between the two because he can actually do it if he's at Fulton, because it goes through the BOCES so that it's on record. And then we keep actually all that information of when they have their certifications up to date on Schedule Galaxy. So we save that even for the volunteers. So they'll get an email saying, your CPR AED is just about to expire, please renew, and then we get that as well as the individual gets that update.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Could I have a motion, please?
I'll make the motion.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
I support staff recommendation resignations. Kira Canale, teacher aide part-time at FPS, and Amanda Clark, food service. So Kira is actually going to, in the backup, she's finishing a program, and she's hoping to start subbing for us and looking into the teaching field. Amanda is backdated to June. She had legally resigned, we were waiting for her letter of resignation.
Any discussion? Motion?
Move it.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
J, support staff recommendation, leaves of absence. Catherine Hook, food service helper part-time, and Crystal McMahon, school monitor part-time. Both are serving under provisional appointment.
Any discussion? Motion?
Move it.
Second?
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
K, support staff recommendation, probationary, 3 school bus drivers for transportation.
Any discussion?
Just want to know how we were doing in that department as far as school bus drivers. I know it was one of those issues before.
Yes.
Is it still?
Well, I think it's always a little bit of a challenge, but we've been sending the applicants along as quickly as we get them, and Tom runs them right through.
The training?
So I think we're always
Always on the edge?
always on the edge, yes, but we have gotten some new applicants lately, so that's good.
Thank you.
Motion, please.
Move it.
Second?
Second it?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
L, support staff recommendation, provisional, Catherine Hook, senior typist at the Fitchie Park School.
Any discussion? Motion?
Move it.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
M, support staff recommendation, change in status. Joanne Giroux, a stenographer, transferred from Fitchie Park to the high school. And Jay Scanlon, school bus driver, that's an increase in hours.
Any discussion? Motion?
Move it.
Second?
Second it?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
And N, our substitute and temporary employees.
Any discussion? Motion?
Move it.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Next is, we will move to finance with Nancy Squire.
A is a contract with Oswego County Opportunities for a not-to-exceed value of $262,488. This is for the Empire State After School Grant for Fitchie Park and Layton School.
Any questions? Motion?
Move it.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
B is a memorandum of understanding with Laura Payne Borsey Consulting Services. This is for $22,500, also for the Empire State After School Grant.
Any questions? Motion?
I'll make the motion.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
C is a contract for service with COCO for the FAST program. This is also for the Empire State After School Grant for $41,700.
Any questions? Motion?
Move it.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
D is the corrective action plan, which I have created for the management letter from the external audit that we had a presentation with from Tom Zuber tonight.
Any
Does that-
questions?
Yes, does that include, because he said there was some remaining from previous year, or those?
No, he said that those were corrected.
Oh, they were corrected.
They were
Okay.
corrected.
Very good, thank you.
Motion, please.
Move it.
Second?
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
E is use of facilities for Little Luke's Preschool and Child Care Center for Riley School for their holiday concert.
Any questions? Motion?
I'll make the motion.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
6 is a donation from SUNY Oswego Athletic Department for warm clothes. I'm not sure which school this is for. Rhonda, do you have more information on this?
Yes, Abby Martin, who is a former student of ours, Lisa Shannon's daughter, contacted me and said that they want the athletic department up at Oswego State University wanted to do, this is their community service project. So they decided they were going to all collect warm clothing, and that I would be the key point person because it's athletics to athletics. And then I was going to reach out to each school's nursing staff and principal and to say, this is what we have, kind of give them an overall inventory of what we had, and then they could disseminate that clothing to who they know is in their schools that need it. So Abby's going to call me back right after the holiday next week, probably like Monday or Tuesday, with what they've collected and if they're going to collect more, and then a key drop off. And then I'll make sure that we do an inventory and we get you all the information of exactly kind of like the monetary amount, what kind of type of stuff. But they were talking about hats, boots, mittens, and jackets that they were going to collect and then bring down to us.
Could I have a motion, please?
Make the motion.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Can you relay our thanks to them too? That's awesome that they're doing that.
Yes, definitely.
G is for the board to accept a donation from Exelon Corporation. This is for coats for Layton Elementary.
Any questions? Motion?
Move it.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Again, sorry,
I was
again,
gonna say that.
this is just awesome that they're bringing up warm kids this winter.
H is another donation from Exelon. This is for personal items also for Frederick Layton students.
Any questions? Motion?
I just have a question. So with all these donations, I know with Abby, it was for community service. With Exelon, did someone reach out to them, or did they just come to us?
Very often they come to us. I know as a principal, we would always get contacted, particularly this time of year. We would get reached out to from people like Exelon, Walmart, Lowe's. They just, it's part of their giving projects for their organization.
That's really,
And
now, do we send thank yous out to these organizations? So we send, okay.
Yep, that's what I was writing down.
Layton does too. They reached out to us last year and offered, and they asked us again this year if we could use the donations.
Okay, that's really great.
Who was that, Jen?
With Exelon, Jen Sharkey, our school nurse, is the
Oh.
contact person there.
Yeah, that's really nice.
Could I have a motion, please?
Move it.
Second?
Second it.
All in favor?
All they did was turn it on.
I is a contract for Freckle Education, Inc. This is for a cloud-based data platform, and this is also for the Empire State after-school grant for $8,555.
Any questions? Motion?
I'll make the motion.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
J is a budget transfer from a district equipment account, and this is just allocating the equipment lines to this school so that they can spend the money. The bucket was $100,000, and we have allocated that to the 7 schools in the district. You'll notice that 2 schools, the funding is a little less than the other schools, and that's because they've already spent some money. So, and this is just a reclassification entry from money that was already in the budget.
Any discussion? Motion?
I'll make the motion.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed. Next, we will move to the student representative discussions. Did you have anything for us tonight?
A little bit.
Okay.
I know through the high school, a lot of seniors are currently doing college stuff, applying, submitting applications and all that. We had both our boys and girls volleyball teams go to sectionals, boys winning, and then for music we had aerial state last week.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next is items from the board. Would any board members have any items for tonight?
I just want to extend a thanks to the staff from the middle school for attending our very enjoyable and boring meeting. Giving us time.
We always get a good turnout here at OMS. What do you do, Mary Beth, to get them to come?
Give them shirts.
Cookies.
It's a swag.
Next on the agenda is executive session. Will there be a need for an executive session tonight? Could I have a motion for adjournment, please?
Make a motion.
Second?
I'm second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? May adjourn.